Hello, my name is Shauna.
And my name is Erin, and we are naturalists with Five Rivers Metro Parks. We are so excited to explore our local pollinators with you and your class during this virtual field trip. Some of you may recognize that I'm here at Cox Arboretum Metro Park.
And I'm here at Wegerson Gardens. It's your lucky day because you'll get a chance to explore both of these parks on this field trip. If you've been to either of these parks before, welcome back. If this is your first time seeing Cox Arboretum or Wegerson Gardens, we hope that you and your family can make it out to visit someday because there is so much to explore. From the forest to the prairie, the ponds to the creek, plus the children's garden here at Wegerson, the tree tower at Cox, and so much more.
The biggest reason that I hope that you come to visit is because this park belongs to you. Did you know that? Did you realize that this is your park? You own both of these parks and many others like it, like Inglewood, Eastwood, Germantown, Riverscape, Sugar Creek, and more. These parks are yours to explore anytime you like. And there is so much to do in our parks, like hike, play, camp, fish, and much more. And it is so important that you get outside, even if you can't visit one of our metro parks, because kids that get outside are healthier, happier, and smarter. And your teacher is so cool and that they are taking you on this field trip. So let's take a minute and give your teacher a big round of applause and a thank you. Now let's start exploring our local pollinators. Today we are talking about pollination, but what is it? Well, pollination is how pollen moves from flower to flower and creates plants, fruits, and seeds. All flowers have this sticky, powdery stuff called pollen, which has to move in order for plants to make those fruits and seeds. Some plants move pollen through the air, like ragweed, while some other plants move it through the water, like hornwort. But a lot of plants use animal pollination, where the pollen is carried on an insect, bird, or bat to another flower. The animal typically visits the flower for nectar, which is a sugary, sweet kind of liquid, kind of like Kool-Aid. They often go into the flower, so if we pretend this is our flower, they often go into the flower to get to the nectar and slurp it up. And when they do, they end up with pollen stuck to them, like you can see now on our bee. If you've ever eaten Doritos or Cheetos, or even some flavored potato chips, you've probably experienced having sticky stuff stay on your fingers, even though you really just wanted to eat the chips. After a flower is pollinated, a fruit with seeds inside starts to grow. Some flowers make a fruit like you and I are used to eating, like an apple, strawberry, or pumpkin. Wildflowers often don't create fruit you and I would eat, but they still make seeds that the next growing season, there are more plants. So we know that animals are pollinators, but which animals are they? Think about who you've seen visiting flowers. The best pollinators around are bees, and not just honeybees, but our native wild bees like bumblebees, mason bees, leafcutter bees, mining bees, sweat bees, and carpenter bees. Also, other insects like flies, beetles, butterflies, moths, and even male mosquitoes are pollinators. The ruby-throated hummingbird is our only bird pollinator here in Ohio. We also don't have any bat pollinators here in Ohio, although in Central and South America, bats pollinate a lot of flowers and are really important. The bats here in Ohio eat lots of insects like mosquitoes and moths, so they are important, but they just don't visit our flowers. When you're going outside to watch pollinators at work, remember these animals have an important job to do. It's okay to get close to them and see what they're doing, and it's fascinating to watch pollinators, especially bees at work. Some people are a little bit afraid of bees, I think because bees have stingers, but bees aren't looking to sting us. They only sting us if they are scared. If a bee starts flying by you, try to hold still. It probably just saw your pretty colored shirt and thought that you were a flower. It may take them a few seconds to realize that you don't have any pollen or nectar and that you're not a flower. But if you're scared, close your eyes, count to 10, and it will probably be gone. Some people are allergic to bees, and we want to make sure that you're always safe. So if you know you have a bee allergy, be sure to have your EpiPen with you. And if you do get stung, be sure to tell an adult. But if you don't swat them, you probably won't get stung. Speaking of bees, let's take a quick trip over to Wegerson Gardens Metro Park to discover more about bumblebees and the amazing way that they pollinate plants like blueberries, peppers, and tomatoes. Can you imagine life without pizza sauce?
Have you heard the buzz about bumblebees? And I'm not just talking about the sound they make when they fly. Bumblebees use buzz pollination or sonication. That means to use sound to release pollen from flowers. To do this, they vibrate the muscles in their thorax while they hold onto the anthers. This is the part of the flower that holds the pollen. With their mouth or forelegs, the sound waves they create shake out the pollen. It's like what happens when I blow air inside my homemade kazoo. The air vibrates the paper covering the end to create a sound. Scientists think that the buzz bumblebees make when they are pollinating is very similar to the sound of the note middle C. This note is also higher than the normal buzz they make when they are flying around. Good thing bumblebees don't have to carry around kazoos with them when they fly. They have everything they need to get the job done, and they get it done fast. It would take several visits to and from the flowers to move as much pollen as a bumblebee can in one visit using buzz pollination. Behind me are some examples of the plants that benefit from buzz pollination in their fruits. But over here, this is a really cool plant. It's eggplant. If we look closely, we can see the stamens on these flowers. Remember earlier when we talked about the anthers holding the pollen? Those are the small structures you see right here. And that would be where we would see that Cheeto dust. Remember that moved and it helped us represent the pollen? Buzz pollination moves this pollen and helps the plant. But collecting pollen helps the bumblebee have a place to lay her eggs. Bumblebees use pollen to create a pollen ball nest for their eggs. When the eggs hatch, the larvae will eat the pollen while they develop. We'll talk more about the life cycle of the bee later in the trip. For now, let's head back to Cox Arboretum and learn about how our pollinators are using their super pollination powers to help humans.
Remember how we learned that some plants make fruits to hold their seeds? Many of the foods we eat come from pollinators. How many of you like apples? What about bananas, strawberries, cucumbers, grapes, peaches, blueberries, tomatoes, raspberries, pumpkins? What about chocolate? All these foods and many more are created by pollinators. Even some of our meats, like beef and pork, are thanks to pollinators because cows and pigs eat food that's created by our pollinators. About 1 out of every 3 bites of food that you eat comes from pollinators. We usually don't think about it, but when we're eating meals, we really should be thanking the bees, butterflies, flies, beetles, birds, and bats.
Take a look at this picture. It shows all the different foods that would be missing from a picnic lunch if pollinators disappeared. Pretty surprising, right? Think about your favorite food. Now go find a piece of paper, draw your favorite food, and do a little research. See if you can find out if that food comes from a pollinator and what kind of pollinator, so you know who to thank.
You may be familiar with the very hungry caterpillar, but since we are exploring pollinators today, let's take a little bit of a closer look at the butterfly life cycle. Butterflies start out as tiny little eggs, usually found on the underside of a leaf. Female butterflies can lay about 500 eggs. These mother butterflies know that their caterpillars will be picky eaters, so they search and search to find the right leaf on which to lay their eggs. Monarchs will only lay their eggs on milkweed plants. Zebra swallowtails will only lay their eggs on the leaf of a pawpaw tree. Black swallowtails will only lay their eggs on dill, parsley, or fennel plants. As you can see now, there is a lot of different butterflies that require specific plants for their caterpillars to be able to eat. Once the caterpillar has eaten leaves for a few weeks, it will be nice and plump and ready to pupate. Butterflies and moth caterpillars will crawl out of the plant they were eating and find a spot they feel safe in for their pupa stage. Some caterpillars will go underground, some will climb up trees or shrubs, or on a bench, on a house, and the butterfly caterpillars will make their chrysalis, while moth caterpillars will make their cocoon. It depends on the butterfly or moth species as to how long they stay in their chrysalis or cocoon, from a few weeks to many months. Many of our butterflies and moths survive the winter in a chrysalis or cocoon. No matter how long they stay in the chrysalis or cocoon, when they are ready, they will emerge as an adult. When they first emerge, they will look like they are wet and droopy, and they will need to pump up their wings before they can fly. Now, they aren't pumping air into their wings, but hemolymph, which is like their blood. They are very vulnerable when they emerge, and if a person or animal touches them at this time, they may not be able to pump up their wings, which means they wouldn't be able to fly. If you see a butterfly with shriveled up wings, watch it, but don't touch it. Once their wings are pumped up, the butterfly is ready to take off and find nectar. Butterflies are not as picky as caterpillars and will drink nectar from lots of different kinds of flowers. They will also then begin looking for a mate so that the process can start all over again.
This house behind me might give you a clue as to which pollinator we're going to talk about next. What kind of pollinator would use these areas in small spaces to make a home? What kind of pollinators can build their own nests? If you said bees, you would be right. Providing shelter like this in or near gardens and flower beds makes it easier for the bees to visit your plants. Think about how easy it is to get somewhere when it's right out of your front door. But before we can talk about bees flying around and visiting plants, we need to understand a little bit about how they grow and change to be able to fly. Let's talk a little bit about the bee life cycle. Bees are like butterflies because they go through 4 stages of growth and change. This is called complete metamorphosis. Bees start out life as eggs. Queen bees are the only ones that lay honeybee eggs, but other kinds of bee eggs, like mason bee eggs, are laid by female bees. The eggs are laid in safe places, like separated cells in nesting cavities or cells in the hive. When the eggs hatch, they are called larvae. Depending on where the eggs are laid, the larvae either have food that was put in their cell by the female bee before she laid the egg, or the larvae are fed by other bees in the colony. Larvae eat and grow until they fill their cell. In hives, the cells are capped with wax to allow the larvae to pupate. Larvae in brood cells form a pupa when they have eaten all the food that was left in their cell. The larvae change even more inside their pupa, and when they are ready, chew their way out and emerge as adult bees. Honeybees stay in the pupa stage for just 14 days and then emerge as adult bees. Other bees may stay in their pupa stage for many months over the winter and then emerge as adults in the springtime. Then the process starts all over again. We mentioned that some bees lay eggs in a hive and other bees lay eggs in a nesting cavity. This is because not all bees live together with other bees. You know that honeybees live together and may realize that different bees in the hive have different jobs. This is because honeybees are social bees and they all work together to keep the colony running. Other bees are solitary bees, meaning that they live by themselves. They don't have any other bees to share their work with, so they have to build their own nests, gather their own food, and take care of their eggs. You might be surprised to hear that most of the bees that are from Ohio, where we live, are solitary bees. The honeybees we know were brought by European settlers to Virginia in 1622 and moved across the United States when people brought hives with them as they traveled. Honeybees help us by producing honey and pollinating some of our crops. But without our native solitary bees, we wouldn't have many of the beautiful garden blooms and wildflowers that fill the forests in the spring. The next time you see a bee, think about all the hard work they do for us and how you can help them. Planting flower seeds at home or around your school is a great way to provide food for bees and make your world more beautiful.
Throughout this field trip, you've hopefully gone outside and watched pollinators at least once. Did you know that by heading outside and making these observations, you are doing the work of a scientist? You are a scientist, and what you see and the observations that you write down are really important. Truly, the only difference between you and a professional scientist is that the professionals find ways to share their observations with the rest of the world. Can you think of any ways that you can share your observations with others? If you need, take a minute and pause the video to think about this, and then unpause it when you have some ideas. I'm sure you've got some good ideas, like telling your family and friends, writing an article for the school newspaper, sharing your observations at a science fair or family night. but you actually can share your observations with scientists around the world. Let me show you how. Citizen science projects allow each and every person to contribute to scientific research, and when it comes to pollinators, there are a few standout options. If you're able to take photos of a pollinator that you see, you can share it with scientists using iNaturalist, which is an app for Apple and Android devices, and a website if you'd rather upload photos from your computer. But you just take a picture and add it with a little bit of information, and scientists around the world can see and use your observation for their research.
Another project, the Great Sunflower Project, asks you to make observations of all pollinators in 5-minute pollinator counts. You do not need to take any photos, and you enter the data on their website. They have 3 different citizen science projects you can get involved with, and there is a short video below you can watch and links to get started.
Thank you for joining us for your Butterflies and Bees field trip at Five Rivers Metro Parks. We hope that you had a fun time exploring our local pollinators. There are so many pollinators at work every day, so keep going out and see who's visiting flowers near you.
As you're eating your favorite foods, be sure to thank the pollinators that made them. And remember, you can always come out and visit a metro park to see pollinators at work in your forests, prairies, wetlands, and gardens. These are your parks, so come and visit and explore anytime you'd like. See you soon!